This is Michael David Cobb Bowen for CubeGeek.com, and today I'm going to talk about part one of a three-part series on the Essbase production cycle. In this, I'm going to give you some ideas about what kinds of things to think about when designing or fixing a broken system that uses Essbase. This is directed at both functional people and technical people, and I'll tend to go off on tangents, and if you don't follow those tangents, that's okay. But this is just the beginning of a wonderful relationship that we'll have in talking about business intelligence systems, primarily using Hyperion Essbase and Oracle technology. So, as you all know, there are three parts of the Essbase production cycle as you are trying to get data from your ERP systems and your operational systems into Essbase data marts for either reporting or forecasting or whatever you're going to do with that data, the manageable data in the Essbase data marts. And the first part of that cycle is the build cycle, and the second part is the load cycle, and the third is the calculation cycle, or I should say steps, because all three of those things make one cycle. And the theme here is that each one of these cycles has different things that you need to pay attention to in order to consider all the things you need to make sure that they work right. And the first one is the build cycle, and I'll repeat all these three in the three series. And in that you need to talk about master data management and naming conventions. Okay, so keeping that in mind. On the data load cycle, you need to talk about supply chain, data supply chain, who's responsible for what data at what point. And then the third, you need to talk about service level agreement, because the calc takes time. So let's focus on the first one, which is the master data management associated with the build. As you know, an Essbase database has dimensions, some of them dense, some of them sparse, depending on the volatility of that data. So over the lifetime of your application, let's say it's a 3-year application, certain things won't change. For example, the name of your company hopefully won't change if you want to keep your job. The time period, you'll just say this has 3 years, so you'll put those 3 fiscal years into your application. The scenarios, there's going to be a budget, there's going to be a forecast, there are going to be actuals, and there may be some forecasts and different management approvals of forecasts, but those generally won't change. Things will change will be your customers, the name of your customers, your channels, your products. You may add some new accounts to that, and each one of those dimensions will be more volatile, and so you're going to have a process that allows you to change the hierarchies associated with those dimensions, as well as the names, as well as the aliases, etc., etc. Now, as a functional person in a financial application, you should be aware of code block compliance, which generally means in your P&L, the accounts that start with a 4 are generally revenue accounts. And so you want to make sure that all of your revenue accounts, and even your contra revenue accounts, start with 4, and that makes it easier for our technical people to say, where are the revenue accounts? And you should be able to eyeball any account and know all the attributes about that account. So this one with a 3 might be shareholders' equity, and you would know where that fits, if it's long-term or short-term equity. And those kinds of things are attributes about these accounts. You may not need these right away, but it's good to have a big piece of paper, other than a ledger, that says, oh, I know all about this account 4205, because one of these days it's going to be out of balance, and people are going to start asking questions about, what is 4205? What does that mean? Where does it come from? And of course, the technical people are not going to know unless you can get it down in writing for them. And it helps, of course, when everything is code block compliant, because then the numbers make sense to them rather than the same way they make sense to you. On a day-to-day basis, of course, you will have in your transaction system a way to add new accounts. But your technical people won't know anything about who is Betty in that cubicle down the corner, who is the person who puts in a new account, or what about when a new cost center comes into being, or what about when a new product comes into being. Then you have the manufacturing people call the product one thing, and then the marketing people call it something else, and the retailing people, the sales people, call it something else. So you're going to have to get all of those heads together on a periodic basis. You should just schedule a meeting once a quarter and say, what are the new products that are coming down the line? We're going to have to plan for them. We're going to have to plan inventories for them. We're going to set the prices. that's a good time to get with your business intelligence people and say, hey, there's going to be new products. That means we're going to have to add to the new model in the product dimension. And it kind of makes sense. And you'll say, oh, well, there's a new product family, or we're going to remarket these and call it a new product family. Okay? So this is the first step in the Essbase process, which is the build process, in which you gather what's called master data. And your master data are all the names of all the accounts, all the customers, all the customer types, all the products, all the product groupings, all the cost centers, departments, regions, areas of the business. And everybody kind of says, yes, we actually know what we're talking about when we say C-525. That is cost center 525. And 525 means we can only have 1,000 of them because we know the numbers are as they are. Anyway, on the technical side, what you're going to have to understand is you're going to have your own independent ODS. Because obviously, nobody's built this data mart before, or when they built it the first time, they didn't build it properly. And that's because nobody could figure it out the way Essbase figures it out. The good thing about Essbase, which is the same good thing about PeopleSoft Tree, is that people pretty much understand when you put it in front of them, both functional people and technical people, what this hierarchy means. The problem is nobody on the planet can figure out how and all those things got put together. So it's a very good idea to get the Essbase functional people and technical people together in a room and put them in front of the application manager or the EAS, the administrative services, and say, see, this is where that product, these products are a group and they roll up to these products, and that's a product family. And everybody will say, oh, I get it. And that's why it starts with P-, because it's a product, right? And everybody will say, yes, I understand that. And then you can take the outline extractor or the star information server, and reverse engineer the outline, which is easy to build, into a table, which is not so easy to build. And you could star that table, or you could snowflake that table, but that's going to be your dimension definition. And of course you can do it parent-child or level or generation-wise, any way you choose. But only if you have ownership of an ODS somewhere between the data warehouse and Essbase are you going to be able to do this easily. Now, if you're an expert in Essbase, you kind of know this. You should ask for the ODS right away, SQL Server, and if you can't do that, then tell them you're going to put MySQL onto their stuff. But then do it on a virtual machine so you can get rid of it if they ask questions. But the bottom line is, somebody's going to have to know on those functional groups where these tables are, where they exist, unless you guys are ready to spend $250,000 for Kaledo or one of the MDM products. So the key thing, of course, is that the build cycle is going to determine whether or not your database is going to be accurate, because, of course, you re-index everything before you load the data in. And so you're going to have to make sure that you have no rejects on your dimension build so that the rest of the cycle can proceed. Okay? Very critical, again, I'm going to repeat, to get the functional people and the technical people in a room and say, what happens when somebody adds a new cost center? And who's involved in that decision? And how have they been doing it up to this point? And who is the person in your organization who really knows what all the cost centers are? And who knows why they all start with X? Or why do the W cost centers different from the Y cost centers? Ask those kinds of questions about the master data. And this is useful design time. Most of the time you think technically, okay, well, I know it's going to be 7 dimensions, and this dimension is going to have 5,000 members. Yeah, I can build that, and I can load it into the cube, and it'll take me a day or two. But it's not going to take you a day or two to get all those people in the room to understand that this new model is probably going to be the model of record until they spend the money on an MDM server. And so you're going to have to be able to get those people in the room so they can understand the implications now of all the change that's going to go on through the life of the application. And when they understand that the application is going to live for 3 years, then you can impress upon them that this is going to be a discipline that they're going to have for 3 years. Now, you would be great if you could build a data entry screen that would be acceptable to the data warehouse people, to the ERP people, and to the functional people, and say, okay, when we add a new account, it's going to go here, and then it'll propagate from there and there. And you could do that, obviously, if you knew Tickle or something like that. Chances are you're not going to have that opportunity. So the best you can ask for is an ODS that everybody is responsible to. Okay? So I don't have any preferences between a level build, a generation build, or a parent-child build. Parent-child builds are recursion, and sometimes that's asking a little bit too much for relational database people, but every once in a while you'll have, a guy who wants to show off and says, yeah, I can build a recursive structure. That would be nice. I do tend to like a level build, because once you have a generation build and then you get gaps in it and you're pushing stuff off to the right, people don't know generally how to write SQL that can compact that over to the left. So it's easier just to do a union query with blank, 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 and add this little piece and blank, blank, thing, in a big if logic chain if you build it from left to right. And that's a little bit easier for relational people to do when they're building a level master data table that's going to feed the Essbase outline. Anything else on a build cycle? Again, the build cycle is not going to take much time to update Essbase. You'll get the rejects rather quickly. Make sure that the people who are responsible for adding this stuff or maintaining the Essbase ODS understand how to read the reject file, and help them understand if they have a 1,000,000 member dimension and only 50,000 rejects, that they don't have to run the whole 1,000,000 again, that they can run the reject thing. And set that up so that will work smoothly. And that will get you on the way. Again, master data management is important, and this is going to be probably your first shot at it, so make sure you get all the right people in the room. This is Michael David Cobb Bowen for CubeGeek.com. Good luck.